Let me ask you something. How many times has WWE quietly let someone walk out the door, someone who genuinely helped build the product, without a single honest explanation? No press conference, no tearful send-off, no acknowledgement, just gone. And that's exactly what happened with Road Dogg. Brian James, the it's the Road Dogg guy, the man who co-wrote some of the most iconic catchphrases in Attitude Era history, the man who came back as a producer and quietly shaped the bones of SmackDown for years. And one day, poof, he was out. WWE's official line? Nothing. Crickets. The kind of silence that always means there's a much bigger story underneath. Today, we're pulling back the curtain. Because Road Dogg's exit from WWE is not just the story of one man leaving a company. It's a story about creative power, political tension, changing leadership, and what happens when someone who built something can't survive the renovation. Stay with us. This one gets deep. Before we get into the fallout, you need to understand just how important Road Dogg was to this business, because WWE has never given him his proper flowers. Brian James debuted in WWE in the mid-90s as a mid-card guy going nowhere fast. The son of Bullet Bob Armstrong, he had the pedigree, but not yet the platform. Then D-Generation X happened, then the New Age Outlaws happened, then the Attitude Era exploded, and suddenly Road Dogg was one of the most over acts on the entire roster. His mic work was electric, his in-ring style was loose, gritty, and entertaining, and that intro, Oh You Didn't Know, became one of the most recognizable crowd participation moments in WWE history. He and Billy Gunn held the Tag Team Championships multiple times. They were mainstays on Raw. The crowd absolutely loved them. But here's what most people forget or never knew. When Road Dogg came back to WWE years later, it wasn't as a performer. He came back as a producer. And then, more importantly, as a writer for SmackDown. And that is where the real story begins. By the mid-2010s, Road Dogg had risen to become one of the lead writers on the SmackDown Live brand during the post-brand split era. And look, SmackDown during that stretch had its moments. There were angles that worked, there were storylines that got genuine traction, and people within WWE credited Road Dogg as someone who genuinely cared about the product, who brought passion and old-school instincts to the creative table. But here's where it gets complicated. Because passion and old-school instincts in a modern WWE creative room, that combination is a ticking time bomb. The complaints about SmackDown's creative during that period were loud and consistent. Critics pointed to repetitive storylines, talent that felt misused, matches that fans had seen too many times, a creative direction that seemed disconnected from what audiences actually wanted. And Road Dogg, as the lead voice, was fairly or unfairly the face of those criticisms. So let's ask the uncomfortable question. Was Road Dogg actually the problem, or was he a scapegoat for a system that was broken long before he sat down at that table? Here's what I believe, and here's what the evidence suggests. The answer is both, and neither. Road Dogg operated inside a machine that was already producing mediocre output at the top. The constraints placed on WWE writers, the last-minute rewrites, Vince McMahon's legendary tendency to change everything hours before broadcast, the inability for writers to truly advocate for talent, these were systemic problems that no single person could fix from inside the room. But Road Dogg's style, his instincts, they were rooted in a different era of wrestling, and the gap between his creative DNA and what 2019 audiences were demanding was wide, maybe too wide to bridge. In early 2019, Road Dogg stepped away from his role as SmackDown's head writer. And here's what was strange. He didn't stay quiet about it. In a podcast appearance, Road Dogg himself admitted something that most corporate wrestlers would never say out loud. He admitted that he had lost the audience. He acknowledged that the creative under his watch had missed the mark, that the product had gone stale, and that he believed it was time for fresh eyes. There's something almost honorable about that kind of admission. In a world full of corporate doublespeak and carefully managed PR statements, Road Dogg looked at the camera and basically said, "Yeah, that was me, and I wasn't good enough." But here's the twist that nobody is talking about. Because Road Dogg's departure wasn't purely about creative failure, and anyone who reduces it to just that is missing the bigger story. Think about the timing. 2019. Vince McMahon is still very much in charge. Triple H's influence within WWE is growing, but hasn't yet reached its apex. The company is in a transitional power struggle between the old guard and the new regime. Contracts are being reviewed, structures are being reconsidered. Road Dogg was in many ways an old guard figure. He was loyal to a particular way of doing things. He had relationships built over decades, and in corporate transitions, loyalty to the previous era can become a liability, no matter how talented or dedicated you are. Was Road Dogg pushed out, or did he see the writing on the wall and choose to leave before the environment became untenable? Based on everything he said publicly, and crucially what he hasn't said, I lean toward the latter. This feels like a man who understood the moment and made a dignified exit before things got ugly. Now here's where I want to challenge you to think bigger, because Road Dogg's story is not unique. It's a pattern. WWE has a long history of chewing up talented, experienced people in its creative department and spitting them out without ceremony. Writers who gave years of their lives to the product, producers who went above and beyond, talent who doubled as creative contributors only to find themselves on the wrong side of a corporate shuffle. The system has always been designed to serve the vision at the top, not to build long-term creative infrastructure. And when the vision at the top shifts, whether that's through natural evolution, management change, or internal politics, everyone below that level becomes expendable. Road Dogg, for all his contributions, was ultimately a casualty of a system that doesn't know how to gracefully transition its institutional knowledge from one era to the next. And that should make every wrestling fan angry. Because when we lose voices like that, voices that actually lived through the Attitude Era, actually understand what connects with live audiences, actually built something that mattered, we lose something that can't be easily replaced. The good news? Road Dogg clearly hasn't lost his passion for the business. His public comments since leaving have been thoughtful, honest, and often genuinely insightful. He's had time away, he's had time to reflect, and in this new WWE, Triple H's WWE, there might yet be a chapter still to write. Here's the question I want to leave you with, and I want you to answer this in the comments below. What if Road Dogg had stayed? What if instead of stepping away in 2019, he had weathered the storm? What if he'd adapted? What if the transition to Triple H's creative philosophy had included Road Dogg at the table rather than outside the building? Because here's what's interesting. Triple H's NXT, the black and gold era, prioritized exactly the kind of storytelling that Road Dogg seemed to understand instinctively. Character work, long-term narrative, matches with meaning, crowd connection over surface-level spectacle. In another timeline, Road Dogg might have been one of Triple H's most valuable allies in rebuilding the main roster creative process. His experience, his understanding of crowd psychology, his willingness to admit failure and learn from it, these are exactly the qualities that a rebuilding creative culture needs. Instead, he was gone before the rebuild even started. And that, to me, is the real tragedy of the Road Dogg story. Not that he left, but that the timing was off by just a year or two. In wrestling, as in life, sometimes being right isn't enough. You also have to be there at the right time. Road Dogg was right about a lot. The timing just wasn't. Road Dogg gave this business decades. He made you chant, he made you laugh, he made you care about two guys in matching ring gear called the New Age Outlaws. And when he stepped into the creative side, he gave that everything too, even when it didn't work out the way he hoped. The full story of why he left WWE is messier, more human, and more complicated than a simple "he got fired" or "he quit" headline. It's a story about the impossible standards inside WWE's creative machine, about the gap between old-school instincts and modern wrestling audiences, about political transitions that leave good people on the wrong side of history, and about a man who had the courage to walk away and tell the truth about why. Now, I want to hear your take. Do you think Road Dogg was treated fairly by WWE? Was he a genuine creative problem, or was he a scapegoat? And would you want to see him return under Triple H's leadership? Drop your answer in the comments right now. The debate is open. And if you think WWE has a habit of quietly discarding people who built this business, share this video, because these stories deserve to be told, and the more people watching, the louder that conversation gets. Hit that like button if Road Dogg deserves more respect than WWE ever gave him. Subscribe to WrestleScope, because we don't do surface-level takes here. We go deep, we go honest, and we hold nobody's hand. I'm WrestleScope, and we'll see you in the next one.